share it with. Oh, there you go. We can catch. You're being recorded. You can catch it not live, but recorded on our website. So yeah, here we are. Thanks for joining so much. We'll begin by acknowledging the land that we are gathering on virtually today is the unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, including the territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh nations. It is very exciting for me today. Volume 7, we are bringing our friend James McGregor here from Deloitte. He will be talking to us about the future of hospitality, the insights to outlast and outperform the restaurant industry. My name is Gino Di Domenico. I'm the managing partner of Taco Fino, and it's my privilege and pleasure on behalf of Taco Fino and Shift Change to welcome everyone here today. If you don't know, what we do here at Shift Change is we support positive and sustainable change in our industry by creating an avenue of dialogue on opportunities that exist in an effort to inspire people to take action and create meaningful change. Today's guest speaker, James McGregor, is the National Restaurant Industry Leader for Deloitte. James has over 20 years experience working with a range of organizations, including those in the hospitality and retail, to promote the use of technology to achieve business objectives. His clients range from casual fine dining establishments to national QSR organizations. Thanks so much for being here today, James. And we also have Taylor Shabadiak, our head of people and engagement, who works very hard each and every shift change to make sure everything goes smoothly. He will say hello and give you a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Thanks, Taylor.
Thanks, Gino. Thanks, James. Hi, everybody. I see a lot of people that have been here before and some new people, so welcome. Just really quick, if you can engage in this dialogue, and you can do that by submitting through the chat. You can send to the panelists. You can share with people. You can submit through the Q&A button. And, if you feel like, sharing and talking, you can click the raise hand button, which is at the bottom right of your screen there. And just so you know, if you do that, I'm going to unmute you and ask you to speak. But those are 3 of the different modalities to be able to connect with us. But yeah, thanks so much. And I'll be fielding questions throughout too. So then we'll pepper them in throughout the conversation today.
Great. Taylor, I don't know if you noticed, there is somebody that's trying to get in. Maybe you can put a meeting link in the chat box there. So if people aren't able to join, they can share with their friends right now and everyone can hop on. James, welcome. We came across your initial report, beginning of the pandemic. Deloitte put out a report of what the heck was going to happen with the restaurant industry when everybody in my position, restaurant owners, operators alike, started rethinking every decision they made to be put in the seats they are today. We're so glad to have you on. How's it going?
It's going well, Gino, and thanks so much, you and Taylor, for the opportunity to present and open this dialogue. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'm hoping for a lively discussion, because I've been in this position only for a few months. So I'm a relatively new leader of the hospitality and tourism and restaurant industry at Deloitte. Although I've got years and years of experience in the space. I put myself through university as a dishwasher and a server, and proud to say my 17-year-old son just recently got his first job as a dishwasher at Nightingale here in Vancouver. So the family tradition continues. So really appreciate the industry, and like I say, thankful for the opportunity to present. So I think as we get into it, just first of all, confirm that folks can see the first slide there. We got a bit of a deck to guide some of the conversation, if that's helpful. So just confirm people can see that.
We're seeing it. Yep, we're getting yes.
Okay.
So.
Awesome. Okay. So hang on a second. Let me just a couple things on my side here. So as Gino had said, this presentation is based on a report that Deloitte had put out a number of months ago towards the beginning of the pandemic. Now, the report itself, attempted to answer the question about future of hospitality, and then dig into the future of the restaurant industry, but really at a time where it was incredibly difficult to understand what the future was going to look like and what the impacts of the pandemic were going to be. And certainly even now, I'll acknowledge that we're still working through a lot of sort of the dynamic nature of what the industry is going to look like into the future. So I will say two things. My presentation attempts to cover off some of the bigger issues and challenges and opportunities within the industry. It's not comprehensive. It's not exhaustive. There's going to be lots of things that are sort of part of the broader dialogue. So I look to learn from this moment as much as, I hope to convey some of the thoughts that we've had as a team here at Deloitte. So to begin with.
I think that's great, and then also gives everyone the opportunity, if there's not a place where you want that question asked, then ask it, and we can dive a little bit deeper, because I know there's a lot of questions on my mind, and I'm looking forward to see what you got for insights. But I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, for sure. So the gist of the thesis of the report is really that the restaurants must search for opportunities to regain trust and make that experience memorable in the face of that pandemic. And it's the position of the firm that the customer behavior changes we've seen. There's things that are going to stick around, and there's elements of the industry value chain that have fundamentally shifted in ways that are that have to be appreciated and can be taken advantage of as opportunities. So the orientation really here is now we kind of come out of this past and dig into this. So what we want to do is, as part of this presentation, just sort of acknowledge the past, rewind a bit, and think about what we all come through. I don't want to spend too much time. I think that's been sort of exhaustively picked apart, reported on, to the point where it may be time to move on. But I do want to acknowledge the past. I want to take a look at the present moment, which seems to be a bit of a pivot. As things open up, as borders start to open up, we get this this interesting moment, and there's some optimism spreading and some changing behaviors that seem to be popping up, both good and bad. And then looking at the future, what the implications of the future, the changes, and looking maybe at specific examples of things relating to technology mainly, because that's my frame of reference typically is around technology. So that's what I hope to cover off today. So any thoughts on that, Gino? Or
yeah, well, I mean, so everything's changed. Everybody went to delivery. Everybody went to takeout, and I mean, it was a massive catalyst for businesses that didn't want to go that route. I know I can speak for Tacofino that we were always hesitant about going through the delivery model, and then all of a sudden we had to created a bunch of new revenue streams for us. We're in a fortunate position that our food travels well, so it was great. And I guess where I'm really curious is, are those behavioral changes that we've sort of built over this last year and a half going to stick? And are people going to move towards using technology to order online, to order delivery, and that sort of thing? And are we going to be falling behind if we're kind of digging in our heels and want to still be romantics about the time when we opened restaurants and we were excited for people to come into our space and experience our food warm and at our table and do so? That's where my head's at. Is everything changed, and do I have to change my whole restaurant plan?
Yeah, it's an intriguing moment around that. That sort of solving the problem of hunger, based on convenience and experience and cost. There's been just that whole thing is blowing up in interesting ways, and people have the opportunities to solve that problem in different ways. So how do you adapt but still keep the experience, the quality in mind? So we think about the transition around business models, cost structures, and what that sort of restaurant of the future might look like. So, and that's really getting into the last part of the presentation. So just to begin with, like I said, I don't want to spend any more time than than is necessary to just acknowledge what this industry has been through over the last year and a half or so. And the challenge many of my clients have faced has been amazing. And there's no surprise, obviously, to this community, but I just want to acknowledge that and really, respect the industry, how it's come through this, and sort of presented some interesting changes that are, I think, going to fundamentally shift the way we look at this. And I think this has been a bit of a forest fire moment where it's difficult to accept, but it has maybe cleared the path for new ideas, innovations. So any thoughts, Gino, at this moment, like how clearly you guys have been impacted by this, and how do you reflect back on it?
Well, if I'm going through the past and sticking through there, I mean, it was that whole moment was really tough. We went from in our organization, we were 300 employees, and we were down to 3 over 2 days. Taylor and myself were, boarding up windows and trying to figure out, like I said, what wrong decisions did I make to lead me to this position where I'm in today? And, am I going to start having to swing hammers and become a construction worker? And, and everything that goes through your head is you've just laid off all of these people, and what are they going to do? And it was so tough. I didn't sleep for a really long time. Like it was, again, not to dig into it, but and it slowly, and Vancouver's been in a great place. I'm bad. I had it worse. I don't want to complain too much, because you can ask any of my friends in Montreal, and I think they're just getting to see restaurants for the first time open during the whole pandemic. So, yeah, I digress. It was a tough past. We're here right now. I'm just really excited to have the opportunity to be going back out and seeing restaurants full. All the new regulations with liquor delivery and patio, street side patio service that's been born from it, I think are great, and they're going to stay, and they're going to empower our restaurant industry and the restaurants that are doing what they're doing now just to be better. So there is a silver lining in all this. I'm just ready for it to be over, look beyond.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, and that's great, and I appreciate the personal frame of that. It's a story I've heard through many of my clients. So as we mentioned, like this is kind of an interesting moment. I think, Gino, you talked a bit about this. What's new? There's the optimism that's taken hold. I know certainly when I'm going out and seeing restaurants at capacity, it's you're reminded of that experience and why this was such an important aspect of our lives. But then seizing those opportunities. So this is a bit of a survey that was presented as part of the report, and I think I would guess this is sort of from my own experience directly, and some of the things that I've researched recently around the industry, that this isn't necessarily accurate, but still something worth thinking about, which is when consumers in this survey had been talked about in terms of imagining them going back into society, going back to restaurants, that 58% reflected on that as being concerned about family health. 34% felt that it'd be safe to go back to a restaurant, so fairly low percentage. And then 72% saying it's extremely important that this, the strictness around the cleaning protocols and the things that kept us safe were in place. Now, this was going back to the report, which was a few months into the pandemic, but this was released. I think the heightened sensitivity that people had around, personal safety, their families, and these things were much higher, I think, than we're seeing now. So this really indicates, I think a trend back to a kind of a normal state. I don't know. Are you guys seeing that in your restaurants, Gino? Would you say?
Yeah, no, I think that the public sentiment has changed quite a bit. And again, we're speaking from Vancouver. I was probably feeling similar to, this report and these percentages here at the beginning, but right now I was just so happy to take my mask off. I am double vaccinated, and I just wanted to start life again. And I think people have that fatigue, that COVID fatigue, and there's no shortage of people going out. So I wouldn't say this is entirely accurate. I think people are definitely going out. We're seeing more and more, and excited to have a few drinks and and go hop around. At the beginning we used to see people just sit and take over a table for 2 hours because they didn't want to go anywhere. They've got their seat, they're feeling comfortable, and now it's a beer here and a bite there, and starting to feel like there's a bit of a nightlife again, or people are returning. So it's great to see.
Yeah, I agree. One of the concerns I have, sort of, this was at the beginning, and now we have this moment where there's a an optimism, sort of a race back to having that experience, right? You're right. Just recently been out to a number of places and seeing this excitement about returning. But I wonder if this is a bit of a moment where people are sort of over optimistic. We might retrench back to some of these feelings. So there is a concern that maybe this moment doesn't reflect exactly what the sentiment will be in a longer term sense.
You're going to be the realist on this, and I can hear the boos through the screen of people being, "No, it's over. We're going back to it." But no, it's totally possible. It's totally possible, and I'm just trying to be optimistic and keep doing what we're doing. But there's a lot going on in the world that are question marks right now, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I don't want to spend any more time in this tree, except there are things to be aware of that are sitting out there as sort of customer sentiments that are important. So within the report and some of the other concepts that we think about here at this pivot moment, realigning that travel and tourism experience. I'll just go through these, and maybe we can pick a few that might be interesting to dive into. Sort of the unprecedented change around innovation and adoption of that innovation. When my parents start to order food online, that's taken hold in a way that just wasn't happening before. The redefining of whatever the traditional business model is, and for various reasons, and we'll maybe get into in terms of the future piece, but that business model, like the full service idea, the cost structures associated with it, but then also the disintermediation of the value chain, meaning that there's ghost kitchens, there's different ways to split up that overall value chain, and then staffing to restart, acknowledging that people have left, and staffing has been a challenge, like fundamentally across this industry in a way that I don't think any other industry has experienced, like broad hospitality, I would guess, but definitely in the restaurant industry, this is a big problem. And then kind of this customer embrace of digital accelerators. So there's a lot of consulting words, but it's more about that third point as well. But key to that is the data. I'd say the customer insights and the data that you now might have access to. So I don't know, Gina, did anything there jump out, or want to dig into anything there?
Yeah. The travel and tourism for Vancouver piece is huge, right? And I think that travel and tourism affects the staffing as well. And they're kind of interlocked in the way that we don't have international students. We don't have people on visas traveling abroad, spending time in the summer. We have, our locals that are living here, and some people work in the restaurant industry, and some have chosen to leave, but we're all picking from the same pool. So I think that's a really big part of why we're seeing this labor shortage, is that there is no tourism. We're not getting the sales, obviously, that we would have got. A lot of our businesses that are in touristy areas, Gastown, etc., aren't seeing the influx of cruise ships. Not that I'm a fan of cruise ships, but they're not coming in, and I'm a fan of the tourism. The unprecedented change, the innovation that's going on, I think that there's, it's great and it's bad. I think you touched on it a little bit earlier. There's a few different reasons why people choose to eat, and one of them is to fuel. And there's going to be there always is this market for people that just want to eat, spend a little bit amount of money within their budget and get the food as quick as they can. And I think that, we're seeing that we need to be adaptable to those individuals, because that is a big portion of the market for lunch business and that sort of thing. But there's still the restaurateur in me, the person who enjoys going out, that wants the experience and the lifestyle. So there is some, changes going on that I think that is great. And I think that there's some that's kind of taking away again from that, that traditional business model, or that I'm a little bit more romantic about it. But so yeah, we've seen this all. And then I've touched on the staffing a bit, but the consumer piece about embracing the digital accelerates, I think it was kind of always going that way. People were talking to me, I'd say, 3 years ago, about pay at the table type situations, bringing your menu online and ordering. So it was coming, but there was this definitely accelerated. And I can say too, my parents are ordering online, and they figured out how to use the World Wide Web and figured out how to get DoorDash to the house, which is a huge step in my household. But yeah, it's all pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. And I'm curious. One of the things I've noticed within the industry is the sort of, I think you pointed out, we're always moving towards the digital aspect of things. But it was happening slow, and there was some caution, and there's definitely some sort of historic friction within the industry around technology, because like often technology can get in the way of the customer experience, and that's is paramount. But the one thing I've noticed within the industry is the data piece, and it's something that understanding the customers in interesting ways is not necessarily something the industry is good at. And I'm sort of speaking broadly about my experience with specific clients. That might not hold true in a lot of different ways, but it seems to be an area where if you understand your best customers, that's a localized knowledge. That's within that store, that location. But understanding broadly the customer behavior sometimes is a challenge. Do you think that's fair to say, Gino?
Oh, I think it is fair to say, and I think the only people that are providing that sort of data set to us are the people that, most restaurateurs have hated the most through this, and that's the third-party delivery systems, right? Because they came in and they take massive percentages on in a place where they were necessary, and it really hurt us. They could, and they did, for us, provide, when asked, consumer behavior. We've worked with I don't know if I'm allowed to say, yeah, we work with DoorDash, and they provided consumer behavior in other markets that we wanted to enter, on where people walk from work, and the distance people are traveling to grab lunch, and how much people are spending, and that sort of thing. So all that data is there. It's coming a little bit from the enemy, but that data is definitely there now. And if any operators or our users are on listening right now, I do highly recommend that you talk to those third-party deliveries that you're working with, because they can provide you that data, and it is extremely useful if you use it to your benefit.
Yeah, yes, that's a really good point. Yeah, because there is a challenge in the response to this moment. You've had to give up some access to the data, or at least introduce a layer of complexity around access to that information. So yeah, very, very good points. Just the next slide gets into maybe some specific, things that we're looking at, sort of interesting moments that have happened in this time. Talk about Mr. Beast Burger and Super Baba, which is, sort of acknowledging, the work that you guys have done in creating a new, restaurant concept. Reef Kitchens, which is a local interesting tech play, which does ghost kitchens and underutilized real estate, such as parking lots. So these three sort of are representative of this kind of strangeness that seems to be going on in this industry, right? Mr. Beast, as I'm sure many are aware, of this incredible story where someone within sort of social media realm was able to capitalize on that on that value and monetize it by selling, I think the fastest rollout of any kind of QSR item in history. Just leveraging the 60 million or so viewers that this person has. Just an incredible story how they were able to ramp that up, or he was able to ramp that up so quickly. And then the other side of that really is about these sort of interesting, innovative, restaurants that are maybe leveraging the different approach to keeping focus on fresh, reduce the cost structures in ways that don't get in the way of the quality of the experience and the product. And then this other thing around reef kitchens, and the other one cloud kitchens, which is probably the bigger play, which is probably many of our folks are aware of the former CEO of Uber, and a lot of kind of capital coming into cloud kitchens, which will fundamentally change a lot of the competitive landscape and the way people kind of enter the industry. So anything that you're particularly concerned about or interested in, Gino?
Yeah, I'm actually not too familiar with the Mr. Beast burger. Now, maybe I should feel like I should have been. Is that like a privately backed rollout? Was that how that went?
Yeah, my understanding is sort of Mr. Beast is this sort of YouTube phenomenon, and in the search for ways to monetize beyond YouTube, what they landed on was developing a Mr. Beast burger, which then they through third party like kitchens wrote in North America, they rolled out a specific Mr. Beast formula and delivery. So it was rolled out in a way that was incredibly fast and leveraged a lot of the interesting kind of disintermediation of the value chain, sort of those opportunities to roll something out very quickly on a national basis, mainly within the States. So this is a phenomenon, an American phenomenon, but I think this maybe I don't think in Vancouver yet, but I'm sure it's coming. But just an interesting, sort of way that the competitive landscape, can be accelerated.
Totally. Super Baba, obviously super familiar with our friends Della and the crew over there. I feel like that fresh, locally sourced is kind of necessary. It's sort of necessary right now for brands. People are more conscious about where they're putting their money, and that sort of thing. I don't know. I didn't see it as changing the service approach. I just saw it as a very much people want a little bit quick service. I know that we have a location. I speak we very broadly. I'm very minimally involved in it. But the location in Victoria has seats, as well as one in Vancouver is going to have seats. We just never put any in there. Yeah, just to touch on that. But the breaking the value chain, the reef kitchens, the stuff is really that's the really scary part. When I think of businesses like Netflix, for example, who started off by moving so-and-so's movie, and they were basically selling somebody else's product to the point of producing their own product, and the future being where they can open whatever ripoff of Taco Fino, whatever ripoff of Super Baba or whatever, and put them all under one house in one space, cut out everyone else, and have everyone's menu. It's basically like the giant chain that you can get spaghetti, steak, seafood, whatever it is, out of one space. And that consumer behavior is changing. I feel worried for a lot of businesses. I feel worried that we're a lot of people's hard work and efforts into making really cool, amazing restaurants are going to get ripped off and sold at a discount. And I don't know if the discerning customer is going to even know or care. They're going to get similar food at a lower price and deliver to their home. So that whole industry really scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's very disruptive, and you framed it a way that I hadn't thought about. like it's so, Amazon does to some of their, some of their sellers where they duplicate their products at cheaper levels, right? There
Oh,
is
totally.
definitely that risk.
They're just content is king, and they'll be able to create whatever content they want in the kitchens that they have. And it's really easy to go into a market and just see who's being successful and do their own copy of it, right?
Yeah. Two things come to mind about that. One is, I think any challenge or risk or problem, there's an opportunity. And, how could you, Tacofino or others, take advantage or leverage like cloud kitchens or REIT kitchens to maybe to go and do something similar to what Mr. Beast did, for instance, right? To leverage that quality and the brand awareness to go, to scale up in a bigger sense. But then I guess the other side of it is it just puts so much more emphasis on the experience itself, like the in-dining experience, because that's something they could never duplicate. It has that tie together, and it is such an important part of the industry.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think you're competing against that in that world, though. If it's one is get the food to me quickly at a cheap price, and the other one is, like you said, is creating the experience. So, if that's the fear, is that we're talking about the consumer behavior. If they're moving away from caring so much about going out and they just want to fuel, if everybody's now become an introvert and is just happy sitting at home and watching Netflix and getting their favorite food delivered to them at their house, then we might be in for a little bit of trouble here.
yeah, it could be. I'm optimistic though. I'm an introvert by nature, but I love getting out there, and I can't wait to get out and see a band and do something with. But anyways, it's one of those things that I think is important to acknowledge, and how you respond to it, because retailers who didn't respond to Amazon are now out of business. It's coming. So
yeah, so I'm looking forward to telling us how we're going to respond to it.
So moving on, this is again from the report. So gaining trust and confidence while understanding your customer. This is getting back to the customer data piece. It becomes critical, especially at this moment, I would say, in understanding, again from the report, that physical safety, the emotional support, the digital security, the financial stability. Those things are key in terms of building the trust, understanding your data. But the most important aspect, I think, these are just ideas about what's important to clients based on when that report came out. But it's the meta thing here is understanding the customers clearly, and looking for trends in behavior, and understanding why people do make certain decisions, like we talked about, whether it's to come in for that experience or whether it's to solve some hunger problem that they need to do as conveniently and as cheaply as possible. So that's that driving factor.
So what? Just sorry for getting up. I just realized I'm in Quebec. I'm 3 hours ahead. The sun's going down. It was getting dark. I was going to be sitting here in the dark by myself. Dig into the digital security bit a little bit if you can.
Yeah. So that's as you get into digitizing your businesses, where that data is held, the types of customer data that you have. Is really important. When people are asked, would they be willing to give personal information over to one of the businesses that they patronize? That's the one of the things that they're concerned about. Is that digital security? Is my data safe with this?
That makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And then for the financial stability piece.
And sorry, Gina?
The financial stability piece.
So that's I'm going to say I don't know exactly. That was in the report, and I'm not 100% sure what they're getting at there. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. Well, we'll leave it for now.
Okay.
I like the emotional support, though. It's I'll be there for any guest that walks through our door.
I need a hug.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, the data is key in understanding. So I'm just curious, like what we've talked about a number of challenges, and I'm wondering from the folks in attendance, if you want to throw into chat what you're most concerned about. What's the feeling now of concern? Where does that sit?
Yeah, that'd be great if anybody wants to chime in here. What your concerns are. We can, while James is here, we can ask some of the questions and see if we can get some answers for everybody. I think that I've been pretty vocal about, my concerns is in a way is people are going to settle for, mediocre food for, a higher price, cold food being delivered from their house from wherever it is, and that's going to become the norm. And that's really, that's something I think that, as you said, we can adapt to, and we can become friends to the service and get better at delivery and understand that market. But just be nice if people wanted to come and see us,
Yeah.
So very, very fearful about that change. I think it's the other big fear is that nobody's going to come back to work in the restaurant industry for a while because there was no uncertainty uncertainty that your job was going to be closed tomorrow due to a pandemic, and now all of a sudden, you realize that not only that you are in a position where you're the most one of the most at risk to contract. I mean, you're especially in this type of pandemic where you're touching people's glasses and forks and knives and dealing directly with public face to face, but also that in a blink of an eye, when people decide to not go out anymore, or your business needs to shut down, then you're not paying the rent. So is that fear going to stay, or is it going to subside? And or how long is it going to take? So I think those are my two top concerns, if you want to speak to those.
Yeah. So I think on the staffing and how that's going to play out, I think it's important. As much as we've talked about understanding the customer, it's understanding the employee, and how how they're coming into this industry, because acknowledging this industry is the number one employer of women, the number one employer of immigrants, the minorities. It's a number one industry in terms of addiction and mental health challenges, right? There's a lot of complexity to this industry that's really worth acknowledging, and that it's a stressful job in and of itself. And hearing about restaurants that are closing because of customer behavior, having to close down because the customers that are coming back are not, so it also really indicates this uniqueness of this industry, and we sort of generalizing across the industry, are kind of counted on, the source of employees in a way that maybe you can't anymore. You can't take it for granted. And what is that experience like? How does someone have a career, a full career where they can support, their livelihood in, within the context of this industry is really, really important to consider. So I think it's playing to some fundamental shifts in the way we look at our teams, our employees, our staff. So understanding that more deeply is actually going to drive a competitive advantage, I would say. We've got some comments.
Are you reading that there, James? Maybe I'll read it out loud so everyone can hear it.
I think those are really good points.
So thanks, Karen. Nice to have you back. I'd be interested in learning how customers respond to higher menu costs that reflect the relationship between food service and fair wages. And secondly, what can we do as employees to shift the ridiculous power dynamic that customers have over our income? James, maybe I'm going to start here. I think that I've said this before. I hope he's not watching. He's probably not watching. But Danny Mayer of Union Hospitality Group I think that's right. We could correct me later, but said, the industry had been afloat, and it's been a boat. It's been on the ocean for, decades and decades and decades. And we've been doing a really good job of taking care of the top of the boat and the ship and making it shiny and nice. And everybody was having a good time. But since this pandemic has hit, we've been able to really take the boat out of the water and stop for a minute, because there were no guests on the boat, and really have a good look at the underbelly and see what's going on at the underbelly. And what sort of lies there is there's a lot of opportunity to upgrade, to clean up the underbelly, and to make things a lot better before we set the ship back out to sail. I think that, wages is one of them, and it's one that Tacofino has been looking at very carefully, and trying to find a way to provide living wages that are, and doesn't take into, it relinquishes that power from the guests, where whether you get a tip or not, you can budget, yourself in your life based on the living wage that you're receiving. It's not easy, and it's not going to happen overnight. And, the costs are going to be passed down to the customer. It's going to change the relationship with our guests significantly. People that might come out, 2 or 3 times a week might only be coming out once a week, because that's what they can afford. But I think it's the business's duty, it's the business's obligation to try to get to a place where where employees feel that they can pay the rent, they can pay their bills regardless of the tips and the extras that are provided. And I think it's going to hurt a lot of businesses. I don't think, a lot of them are going to survive, unfortunately. And it's going to be a tough shift. But I do think that, especially with reduced pools, where a number of people applying for jobs will pick their ponies, and they're going to go to places where they're going to feel secure. So it's definitely an interesting time. I think it's only going to take time, and it's going to take a shift in consumer behavior to understand that the prices are rising so that individuals can pay the rent.
Yeah, excellent points. I hadn't heard that analogy from Danny Mayer. I think that's awesome. And I know he's been, sort of pushing, the boundaries of, tipping and how that gets, managed, or, having, doing away with that concept. But, it's so deeply embedded in the industry. Any changes will be a long time in coming, I'd say, in that regard. It's good to see, though, as we get to livable wages, especially here in BC, as of June 1, having that extended to, to servers, I think is really important. And it's also important to note that there's other jurisdictions around the world that maybe they haven't solved this problem, but they've gotten closer to it maybe than we have. Thinking about Australia, and food prices are expensive. You go into a restaurant in Australia, it's an expensive, but it's justifiably expensive because of the associated things we've just talked about, right? So, and it's always interesting, a customer, I think, could respond to maybe an ingredient in a way that they can understand the price going up, but understand the correlation between the price and the experience, the price and the server, like that. Maybe that needs to be made clearer to the customers. That holistic value that they're receiving, and how that plays out in price, right? So maybe the industry needs to do a better job at sort of explaining that or fitting that together in a way. I don't know, and I hate to put it on the industry, but there's something there.
Yeah, don't put it on us. We'll put it. Yeah, I don't. It's a great point. I know that the industry is collectively talking about what we got to do, and a lot of businesses are talking about making these changes. But at the end, it's not going to be easy. Hey, Karen, I would love to get in this with you if Taylor, if you'd like. I'd like to dig into that, how it ultimately puts the responsibility back onto the server I don't know if you're willing to speak to us.
Sure. So do we want to talk about addressing the power disparity or?
Oh, well, no, I'm just seeing, so have you seen Karen's question here?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Yes,
just
we
wondering if
flip.
Karen wants to speak to us directly.
Oh,
Okay, maybe not, maybe not.
There we go.
Okay, well,
right.
well, I mean, Taylor, do you have your perspective since you're on the horn?
Well, I think I figured out, Karen, I'm going to unmute you, and I know you raised your hand. That's okay. Hi, Karen.
Hi.
Hi, Karen.
Hey, Karen.
Thanks for joining.
Hi there. Thanks for taking my question. And I mean, what I don't work in service anymore. Okay. Just like I don't work in restaurants anymore. I work more directly with clients. But ultimately what happens in the at the top end of like the decisions that managers make, I mean, ultimately it ends up being the server who has to explain this to the guest. Or so it seems to me. I don't know, maybe I'm way wrong on that, but
No, I
That's
think, are you saying that, you know, the price increases when somebody comes down and, you know, you were getting their nachos at $15 and now they're $17 and they've had them, I've been coming here every day for the last 5 years and now I've got to pay $2 more. And then, you know, server A is standing there being like, oh yeah, well, you know, I got to eat too, sort of thing. Is that what you mean?
something like that. Yeah, that's what I. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I think that's a valid point. You know, I've seen some restaurants trying to educate people through things. And I think it's one way, right, for somebody to or a business to back the servers before, you know, those questions come up, big bold lettering saying we've increased our prices because we want to take care of our people, right? So that kind of
Yeah.
lines people up to be aware of what's going on. And I think the rest of it is, you know, to James's point, is it does have to be a little bit of the industry trying to educate people through our voice, through social media, on Instagram, wherever it is, to let people know that, you know, this isn't a trend. This is, we already have pretty razor thin margins. The price of food is only going to continue going up. Other industries are paying their people more, so that cost is passed on to the businesses, which then, you know, our food costs go up and so on and so forth. So somewhere somebody's going to have to pay more, and that's going to be the user. And I think there's educating coming from the businesses, and hopefully it's not just the server. I hear your
Yeah.
point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a very good point. It plays back to the other concern you have around staffing and how people are treated with, like, you know, this dynamic.
Yep.
So
Taylor, there's a follow-up question. Follow-up in your research. Have you come across any research? In your research, have you come across any restaurants that are implementing compensation or other labor strategies to adapt to labor shortages?
Yeah, so no is a short answer. What we're seeing, what I have seen over the last 2 years, there's an emphasis among some of the larger restaurant operators to invest in HR systems. So HCM, one of them would be sort of alternate software, which comes with a whole bunch of modules that can get into sort of the heart of the employee experience, you know, what that life cycle is like for employees. So there have been some initial investments I've seen within the industry around sort of setting up the understanding of that by the data and the learning and management experience and things that would be important to respond to a moment like this. So, I haven't seen how that might play out. I suspect that's happening now in real time as people respond to labor shortage. But it's another thing I think, involved in this pivot that we'll have to track against to see how people are responding.
Sure. Great.
So I might maybe shift gears, Gino, if you don't
Yeah,
mind,
that's great.
maybe
Yeah.
get into a bit of sort of the future. And like I say off the top, this isn't really an exhaustive perspective on the future. Hopefully somewhat optimistic, and how Thrive can be achieved. Meaning, like, this is the future is bright. People are going to move back to something that is really enjoyable, for everybody involved in this industry. So with this in mind, this is some content from the report where it looks at putting the customer at the center, and not so much because it's about understanding more clearly. So we've got engaging actively, embracing the agile workforces and supply chain, make the physical environment as clean and stress-free as possible, using technology to alleviate operational burdens and promote safety, online touchpoints expanding the experience, focus on operational agility to navigate through uncertainty, and finding new ways to do business, that with that business model might shift to do business in a traditional sense, but that's actually, I think it's more about the business model and how that's playing out. So there's a lot of consulting language there, and peeling back that consulting language, I think at the heart of it is a lot of the things we've talked about. So what drives the customer's decisions? Understanding that, and understanding that from an analytical or data-driven sense, like gaining the insights through data is really critical. And your earlier point, Gino, around advising folks on this call to get access to the data, I think it's critical. If that's table stakes, you just have to do it. The other one is, once you understand that, how do you adapt the business model, value position, competitive, advantages that you have in mind? How do you expand those, strengthen them, change them if necessary? How do you respond? And again, the use of technology is key. That is my frame. So I'm a bit biased, or everything looks like a nail to a hammer in a way. But I do think that technology, investing in technology is going to be the way a lot of restaurants will get to thrive. And then when we talk about organizational agility, we got a fairly structured approach to working within the industry. And the way the kitchen works is very, because it's a big generalization. I'm sure there's many exceptions to this, but tends to be sort of command and control. How does that play out in terms of the employee experience? It's important to revisit the structural elements. Now, agility is, how do you rapidly change, or from a meta sense, change how things work within the organization by embedding some tools, some training, some techniques to maybe restructure, revisiting the structure of your organization. And then beyond that, it's how does that play out from a safety, security, trust, really the client trust standpoint. So a lot going on there. Again, very consulting-ease, but hopefully there's some nuggets there.
Yeah, I think I think there are, and I think that I think Taylor, we're going to ask the same question here. At the end of the day, especially right now, reserves are low, right? We don't have a lot of money to spend. So is there some, low-hanging fruit that people can be looking at to invest in that would really make some difference from where you sit?
Yeah, I think the low-hanging fruit you pointed out would be the third-party, sources of data, digging into those and seeing what you can derive as a first step. The other one is, sort of basic customer relationship management technology. And although there is cost associated with it, there are some cheaper solutions that can be throttled according to use, so that even smaller organizations can start to build in databases of customer information, and start to do that. And that could be done, in fairly inelegant forms like, spreadsheets, and, within Google environments with the databases that they provide, and things like that, right? So I would say, engage someone who can help in orienting the organization to the technical use, or driving it back from business requirements. What are you trying to achieve? And then taking a look at the technology within the constraints, because there are some cheaper solutions. And for me, I don't exactly have all of them at my fingertips, but
Sure.
there are definitely some options.
Great. Well, thank you. I don't know if you can see, it's lightning and thunder coming out over here. I hope I don't lose everyone.
Stay safe.
Yeah.
So maybe moving on to the next here. So maybe another question out. Maybe Gino, if you think about the changes that you've brought in, that you think you'll continue to use, or the changes that you're considering over the next few months or so.
Yeah. Well, like we said earlier, the third-party delivery has been huge, despite the chunks of change that they take. They do offer some promotions that help make it visible to you. We have regular make you visible to others. Sorry. And you do get to sit down with account managers and talk to them, and see the data. What are people ordering? How far they live? Where what items might not be selling, what travel well, which arrived cold, and that sort of thing, which has been really helpful. Our online ordering through our website. Of course, you want to go, you just want to click. People want to talk to you. Others less and less. They just want to click and show up and pick up the food and be there, which is another great technology. The issue that's arising, and one of the ones that we're looking into, is now you have somebody that's sole job is managing this screen here, this screen here, that screen here, ringing it in. So it's like an air traffic controller. And I know that there's some solutions that we were looking at. If Anthony was here right now, he's our head of operations. It's Direct. Maybe Taylor, you remember something Direct. But anyways, the Hootsuite, the group that just amalgamates everything and integrates with your POS to make our lives easier as at the store level. I think that's the next big technology, because you're using, Skip the Dishes, DoorDash, Uber, or your online orders, XYZ, somebody's coming from here, and to just amalgamate all that information and to give us whatever report we want to pull out at the end of the day, like how much are people spending, where are they coming from, where is it going? All of that would be extremely valuable to help make decisions about, even our busiest times, how many people to staff to keep our labor where we need it, what items to put on our menu, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's definitely where we're looking, is basically, so how to make that all easier for us is not anything we've ever done before.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Fundamental shift. It's here to stay. Anybody else that maybe talks a bit about some of the changes they're considering? Maybe we can sort of get into the next, which is maybe a bit further out, like what sort of things are need to be considered. So what is next? There's a few things here that's maybe provocatively stated, but need to be considered. The automation of everything. This is happening across all industries, and sort of the automation of the restaurant industry is seeing that's starting to take hold. Robotics is a real thing. The this needs to be considered, either from from how do you leverage this, how do you take advantage of this, or how do you look at this from a competitive standpoint. The focus on the environment, what we eat, is a big factor in how people decide they're going to do the right thing for the environment. Certainly that plays into the value proposition that this industry presents. I'd add to that waste as well, and understanding how that plays out could be an important point and differentiation around the experience versus just the basic product. Collaboration, I think this is a point the report makes, is around how do you collaborate within the industry and outside of the industry? What do those collaborations look like? Extending beyond the broader value proposition, beyond just the restaurant industry, that experience. How do you create lifestyle moments that people would be attracted to? What does that look like depending on your particular operation? And then the other one is insights-driven artificial intelligence and AI. Once you have the data, we talked extensively about getting access to the data, the employee data and the customer data, understand behaviors and drivers. The next level is laying on the learning, the robotic, or the artificial intelligence, the machine learning piece to it. And there's some fascinating things being done, especially within the QSR aspect around AI. And it's I think at Domino's in the States now, they'll start your order going the moment you call. If you always order a particular type of pizza, you see the number AI pushes through the order. They're already starting your pizza before you even talk to anybody, and then that's on its way in a delivery van that has all the pizza ovens in it. So you're getting that sort of the AI benefit just to speed through or to deliver that value proposition of that particular segment. But how does that play out in other ways could be really interesting. An extension of that AI, and I'm sure many folks have heard about the sort of the grab and go concept with Amazon that they're working through, and it's kind of, I would say, it's Uberization of the restaurant industry in the form of the payments at the end. So how do you create a situation where patrons can just get up and leave? They're charged automatically. Bill splitting isn't an issue. I know that's such an industry problem, right? So that moment of payment, such a bad customer experience across the industry. How do you solve that in a way that's like taking an Uber, just leave the vehicle, right? So there's a lot of interesting things going on, from a technology standpoint around that space. So.
Yeah, very interesting. I mean, there's a lot that's scary in there for sure. The automation of everything is scary for jobs, obviously, but it also solves a labor shortage at the same time. So
yeah,
it's definitely something to consider. With regards to the collabs within and outside of the industry, I think we're seeing a lot of that right now already. Some real lifestyle brands combining with collabing with other restaurants and doing some cool things that that create brand awareness and attachment and give brand loyalty to a lot of customers. So I think that's also something that you will continue to see because it's definitely working. One of the things that I've seen that I'm also looking into is on with the artificial intelligence is some of the worst interactions as well is that telephone interaction, and we're seeing a lot more AI coming to the restaurant industry where you're able to speak to a robot, robot in its whatever sense you want to take it, and they're able to direct you, or they take your phone, the number that you're calling from, and you want to order online, or you're calling to place an order and you've already received the link to your online ordering on your device that you're calling from, which eliminates that person having to answer the phone at the store and be like, what's our address, and now that person's off the floor, they can't hear because the music's loud, whatever, and it's like, oh, you got the order wrong. It eliminates all of that, and that's the technology, that I'm also looking forward to. Taylor's asking here, as it relates to collabs, have you seen any restaurants doing good partnerships with other restaurants? So I didn't see that, but yes, I've seen a lot of clothing brands doing it. I've also seen less so with restaurants. I think I've seen things like companies like Coca-Cola or Mountain Dew or Pepsi doing stuff with PlayStation and Xbox, where you can see the obvious, customer correlation where, it's a kid drinking Pepsi or Mountain Dew and playing PlayStation, and he gets points for his games and that sort of thing. I've seen some great collabs within our industry with, like Vans and restaurants, or a beer and a clothing group. All of the names are escaping me right now, but they're definitely out there. James, have you seen any?
I've seen one in particular comes to mind that's been pretty powerful. I can't get into the names, unfortunately, but there's the idea, and I think you raised this, Gino, quite elegantly, is that we're seeing people go out and they're going to different places. There's a progression of the night. You might start with some friends to grab a drink, and then you might go and have dinner, and then you might find a place to have a nightcap or whatever is have a later night experience, right? So there's a bunch of things you might do in any given moment, and where I've seen restaurants collaborate is where one strongly owns an aspect of that, the other strongly owns another aspect of that, where they get together and they start to do some, sort of co-marketing, maybe some joint events, maybe some, understanding of progression of the night, or, sort of managing it so that, customers are going to here, that they're likely to go to here, and that there's, some interaction between them. And that's been successful to the point where I think, the one that I'm speaking of is actually starting to ramp up new concepts around this idea. So, yeah.
Yeah, Rochelle makes a good point. Our friends at Juke and DL Chicken have done some pop-ups together lately with breweries in Vancouver. And yeah, they go into communities where the restaurants aren't. And I think that's great because you get to share a bit of a customer base and introduce maybe Juke to the beer drinkers and the beer drinkers to Juke, etc. And I think there's a lot of businesses, I think of the music industry that's done this for years, where a great example is when Rick Rubin had the Beastie Boys open up for Madonna, which was a mind-blowing concert, right? Everybody's going to see Madonna, and then these three Jewish rappers out of Brooklyn come and do what the Beastie Boys did, and then all of a sudden, Beastie Boys are on, are who they were. So yeah, those types of collabs can really bring customers together and create new ones. So thanks, Rochelle. Thanks for sharing it.
Yes, that's a great point. Yeah, I think we've talked about some things that are maybe framed as threats or some challenge to the industry, but I will say, in time in the industry, it's continually exciting and interesting and surprising how innovative folks are in this industry and how open they are to new concepts, taking great risks and doing some amazing things. And it's such there's no industry like it. I mean, you maybe talk about the technology industry where I sort of originally come from, maybe gets into it, but in terms of customer concepts and value, it's amazingly inspiring, which gives me optimism. We're going to see some great things happen at the local level, and it's not going to be an experience with like retailers have with Amazon or having. It's going to be some really powerful moments of innovation within the industry. So
that's very exciting. Very exciting stuff for sure.
Yeah. So that's it. I mean, in terms of content, but just a welcome for the questions or discussion. If anybody, Gino, you had anything else that would be good for us to chat about?
No, I mean, I'd like you to give me all the reassurance in the world that the restaurant industry is going to be okay, and we're all, about to thrive. I think we're still a little bit on the edge of our seat to see what's going to happen. I think that I'm still hopeful that, this will be something in everyone's distant memory next year. And, the borders will be open and people will be traveling in, but, I am optimistic. I definitely am optimistic. But, you've highlighted a lot of, I think, where we should be. I guess, do you see a place in, 5 years, 10 years where if people aren't adapting to the technologies that they're going to be left behind? Or do you think
Yes, I mean, it's a tough question to answer. I think it depends. There's some some variables to that question, like being left behind. I think there's always going to be room in the market, the industry for folks who are just doing great work, providing great experience. It's never going to go away. So regardless of technology, you're pushing aside the technology piece. But I think for restaurant operators to grow, to get to that maybe next level, for sure, that's going to be part of the equation. And how do you get to that next level as an operator will depend largely on how you look at customer data, how you manage the employee interactions, how you look at your business model differently, and how you get to that next level of experience, value to your customers, and expand in ways that sort of these amazing stories that are happening now with Mr. Beast and others, for instance. So yeah, I think it's going to be really important to consider technology.
I have a question. So, I know this report kind of the beginning of COVID. Have you noticed anything recent trend-wise that surprised you as things gradually start to open again?
Yeah, I think the thing that surprised me is a recent study that I read that was published in the New York Times, where they're talking about, they did a survey of about 3,000 or so folks that were in the industry or were leaving the industry or considering leaving the industry. And one of the things that jumped out was that it's not necessarily about wage, that's a big part of it. It's not necessarily around, the other aspects of what we talked about, but the difficulty, the challenge, the stress of dealing with customers, representing between 30 and 40% of the reason that people are considering leaving the industry. So I felt that was surprising. And then also layering on, it seems that maybe there's people are coming back to that restaurant experience and maybe have to relearn how to be a good customer, I don't know, or something like that, because there seems to be some interesting moments now. Like I made reference to, restaurants having to close to give staff just a break from, the behavior of the customers. Maybe that's a bit of an anomaly, but it maybe not. Maybe there's something else going on in terms of the response in this moment with customers. So. Gino, you're nodding your head. Are you guys seeing some of that? Like, are people sort of misbehaving, or what's
I'd say they're few and far in between. There's not a lot of misbehaviors. They do show up. A lot of. I think that what I'm seeing the most is the natural want for a customer to have the exact same experience that they had before the pandemic. They don't want to have, it reminds them that the world has changed, right? And when you go out to eat, people are reminded that the world has changed, but it's not the same experience, and it won't be for a while. And everything takes a lot longer to happen. We're, being super, when we talk about the safety and the physical safety, number of extra steps between, taking an order and getting someone's food and clearing their table is enough to create enough of a time lapse that people notice. And then, you tack on increased pricing, and you tack on masks or physical distancing, and people aren't getting what they want, and it's not our fault. But people are taking it out on, our servers and our teams that are working at the restaurants, and it's unfortunate. There's some people that you can tell that is really just, damn, I wish it was the way that it was, and I'm mad and I'm frustrated, and you're our server and you can take it out. And then there's also the complete jerk that's just like, I'm not wearing a mask, screw you. This is my right, whatever. And you're going to get those. But, we've been in the restaurant industry for a lot of us for a really long time, and we know how to deal with jackasses, and that's fine. But when it's the general public that we've done a really wonderful job in the setting that we've been given to provide the best experience that we can, and we're still disappointing. And I think that's a lot to take, and that's tough. And so I think we see a lot of that. So it's definitely is it's a different world we're operating in. Are there any other questions here? We're getting to the end, so final thoughts, ideas.
I guess I had one last question. Sorry. As it relates to restaurants that are starting to open prior to and during COVID, are you seeing more of a shift to a specific type of model? Like, for example, are you seeing more of the QSR model, the quick service restaurant model that would be, provide, I'm not going to leave that question, but
yeah, it's the change that I'm noticing is around full service. So is full service something that's going to change in a sort of the middle ground between QSR and sort of formal dining. So I know the folks that I've talked to, they're now looking at the change, new concepts, things that they bring in a different way. That full service experience might not be there in the way that people typically expect. So that's in a direct correlation to the staffing challenges and the cost structure changes. So that's one thing I've noticed and spoke with a number of folks in the industry about these new concepts.
Yeah. Well, a lot of uncertainty in the future here. Tell your friends to go out and be nice to the servers in the restaurant, staff,
tip well,
and teams, and tip well. James, it's so great to have you. This is great, insightful work. I'm sure that we could spend hours and hours digging into every little bit, but we do sincerely appreciate your time. Any final words before we go?
No, just to thank you to the team, to Gino, to Taylor, and to everyone who attended. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak about this report and some of the other insights. And this dialogue has been very informative. So thank you.
Thank you, and that's great. And we look forward to the next report.
And really quick, I don't think we firmed it up, but part of this shift change for our initiative is we do want to give back to the community. So for each session for a year time, we're going to donate $1,250, and I don't think we firmed up on an organization that you would appreciate that money going towards. It relates to a nonprofit, and you can think about it too. I don't want to.
Oh, you're asking me? Absolutely, yeah. Oh, there's a number. I'll get back to you, and I really appreciate.
Put you on the spot right now and tell you where we're going to put all our money. Feel free to just email us. We'll give. Okay. I'm sure we'll be in touch either way, and we'll make sure that we get the donation to where you see fit. Thanks again for your time. Thanks everyone for joining again. We know you take your time out when we do these. An hour and a half is a lot of time, and so we thank you for sharing. ShiftChangeNow.com to see the video again, to share it with your friends, and we will be in touch about our next and upcoming event. Thanks to everyone, and have a great night. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.